Tim Chapman joins us in the leadoff spot. Tim, thanks for giving us a few minutes.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Sometimes in the media, the think tanks get a little bit of a bad rap, but you guys are out there as part of the Heritage Foundation. Heritage Action is an arm of that does some great things. I know in the past, Heritage and others have helped Trump and the administration pick judges and do other great stuff that people that want to make America great again are happy about. Tell us, we get past all the rhetoric that's out there and we drill down into what the real deal is. Tell us what Heritage Action is all about and what you're doing for America.
So the Heritage Foundation was started in the 1970s, and it was started with a very simple idea. That was to take conservative ideas and make them actionable on Capitol Hill so that we produce outcomes in terms of laws that we pass through Congress. But what we've done now with Heritage Action as a sister organization is we've built a grassroots army across the country. People who are really engaged, who really care about seeing this country go in the right direction. Many of whom came out in droves in the 2016 election and who we really need to come out again in the 2020 election. So we work with those grassroots activists across the country to advocate for those kind of limited government, free enterprise, in individual liberty defense principles that we care about.
Some people say that, these think tanks, they have too much power. Do you think it could get out of control with the power that think tanks have, or do you think it's a good measure that we need in place?
So what we've tried to do is we've tried to make the power come from the activists across the country, individual citizens who care enough to give up their time. And so, I think there is some room for criticism of think tanks in Washington, and not just think tanks in Washington, but of the entire kind of lobby infrastructure in Washington. That is a problem. The solution to that is opening it up by engaging people across the country, giving them a voice in Washington. That's what we're trying to do.
So you guys are not taking these big hunks of money and just running down there and lobbying the policymakers for some big money ideas. You guys are setting grassroots organizations throughout the country that aggregate ideas and kind of report up to a local organization, and that kind of funnels up to what conservatives want to see in policy, right? It's not just this concentrated group of money men.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So if you look at a typical lobbying organization in Washington, whether it's a corporate lobbying arm or a lobbying firm, they will, on their quarterly reports, they'll list clients. Okay, this person's paying us this much and this one's paying us this much. We don't list a single client. We don't have a client. Our client are ideas, right? Ideas that we care about and believe in. And then the people we work with to achieve that are the citizens across the country.
In the perfect world of Heritage Action, what would healthcare look like?
So what we want to do is there's this entire set of regulations that Obamacare put in place. It's an infrastructure that they erected under the Democratic leadership that put all these onerous burdens on healthcare across this country. And so it put burdens on states in particular, and it made the market kind of tight so that costs are going up. And what we want to do is we want to take that infrastructure and we want to begin to dismantle it. And we want to allow states to have the flexibility that they need to innovate at the state level. And so we want to say, look, New York, if New York wants to have a certain kind of healthcare market, they should be able to do that. And if Texas wants a different kind, they should be able to do that. And then what we'll do is people will hold their local elected officials accountable to make sure that that market works. We want to push the decision-making down to the state level. We think that's a healthier thing for the country, and we think ultimately it will provide lower costs in healthcare and better quality.
With the Democrat House, is there any chance we can get a bipartisan agreement on health care in your view?
I think it's very slim that we would get a bipartisan agreement. I think, what the Democrats want, the Democrats have a fundamentally different philosophy than we do about this. What I was talking about earlier in terms of trying to allow states to have flexibility and innovation, they don't want that. They want a one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare. And where they're headed ultimately is a Medicare for all socialized system. That's where they want to go, and there are varying degrees of that. And we just think that if you go in that direction, you're going to, look at what's happening in some of these countries, overseas, with the terrible cost, with the long waiting lines, with the poor quality of care. We think if you go in the Democrats' direction, that's a bad thing for the country. So I don't see a compromise being brokered here. I think this becomes an issue that we talk about going into the 2020 elections. And I think, frankly, the president was smart to put some focus on this. A lot of people say that even some of the Republicans in the Senate said, hey, he shouldn't have done that. We let the Democrats hang themselves on the issue. But no, he's got to have something to say we stand for when they're talking about what they
Well,
want
every
to do.
time they run out of issues, they start banging the healthcare drum and doing the fear mongering. I call it. You're going to lose your healthcare. 20 million people. What's the one big idea that people are not hearing about that you guys want to do to help America?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest issue that we need to tackle is we need to think about how the people who came into our coalition in 2016 behind President Trump, working class Americans across this country, who in previous elections voted for President Obama, who 10% of whom voted for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic primary, we've got to figure out how to keep them in the coalition. They left the Democrats for a reason, and the Democratic Party was failing them on all sorts of levels. The Republican Party has to find a way to keep them. They're on rent right now. They're not a permanent part of the Republican coalition. This party needs to take working class issues seriously and figure out how to keep them.